Sean is the one who had the gun, the pawn shop, I guess. He had a company called Easy Forms, I believe it was, down in Boise. I believe it was on Fairview as well, and or around that area. I would have to drive there to know the streets because, you know, it's been a long time. And that's where Mike would go and get the guns sold. And
Was it this Easy
Forms, I think it was called. So anyway, Sean and Mike.
I'm sorry, I just want to ask a quick sidestep question. So Mike was selling guns at this Easy Forms, was like a pawn shop. Is there any chance that that is connected to Vista Pawn?
To what?
Vista Pawn?
Yes. So when you guys were talking about the story with Ahren Barnard and the guns, and you guys were asking, I believe it was his ex-girlfriend. I believe her name was either Kelly or Vicky.
Kelly, yeah, Kelly.
Okay, Kelly. So she's like, I don't know what they would where they would meet up or where they would get rid of guns. That's exactly where they would get rid of guns. Sean is the big connection with the guns.
So just a clarifying question. So Sean knew your brother, Sean knew Micheal Dauber, and Sean knew Ahren Barnard.
I don't know 100% if he knew Ahren Barnard, but that whole story, Randy, it is making too much sense for me.
There's a lot of
absolutely. And I told the cops when we were doing the search and everything, I told them, you guys, when I get my gut feeling, I'm telling you, it's all connected. And they looked into it. And this was before I had spoken to Vicky Barnard. Before I reached out to her, you know, we were talking for a very long time as well. She's a lovely lady. I felt that it was connected. And the story was back then that Ahren was in a homosexual love triangle, is what they got out of that.
Huh.
Yeah. So I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. I said, and then years later, because I kept pushing to get that, you know, investigated too, because, you know, I'm always trying to get it all, because all you need is one more body, and Mike's not seeing the light of day or the parole board or anything. You know what I mean? So I said, you guys have got to look a little bit more into that. So years later, they found out, they told me that it had to do with guns. And I'm like, put two and two together, man. What, do I have to be the investigator in this case? I said, it's guns, drugs and guns. It's up Mike's alley. They go to the gun shows. It's connected, dude. It's all connected.
At the very least, they probably knew each other.
Absolutely, they did.
Yeah,
but
and
to
so
get rid of guns or to find guns, Sean was the main guy that Mike would go to.
Okay.
Yeah, and so what the rumor that we heard as far as Dauber's connection supposedly to the Ahren Barnard case was that he killed Ahren over a bad gun deal.
And it could be. Don't doubt that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you now, don't doubt anything to do with selling drugs, money, or guns. It's Mike.
And just another side note question: by any chance, did you know if Sean or your brother or Micheal Dauber knew a guy named Roy Rice?
Why does that name ring a bell?
Roy was the owner of Vista Pawn.
You know what? I would have to say possibly, because that name is just, it's just too familiar. You know, okay. Steve knew quite a many people. And like I said, they, you know, Steve didn't have a license for these guns is what you know, up in Idaho, that's what they do. They buy guns.
That's common.
Yeah. I was going to say they usually don't need a license. And the first thing that Dale and them were saying, do you have the serial numbers? I'm like, yeah, sure. Let me pull out a blank sheet of paper for you, Dale. You know, there's semi-automatics, there's the 45s, there's 25s, there's, I can't even tell you, I told him there was so many guns that Steve bought. He invested 10 to 20 grand on guns alone, not including, like I told you, it took him 4.5 hours to load the ammunition. Come on, man.
Yeah.
All of a sudden he took it in 2 garbage bags. Are you kidding me?
Right.
It was a crazy story. It's crazy.
So 5 years goes by, you finally get them to you get someone that's willing to work with you to help you to do it.
Yep.
They arrest Mike Dauber.
It took a minute. They the feds do what the feds do.
Mm-hmm.
They do surveillance. They had it all set. It took a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say
what made them finally realize, like, what do you think finally broke? Do you know what I mean? What piece of evidence they finally get enough of that they finally said we can finally arrest him?
what evidence it was. It
Mhm.
was Virgil.
Okay.
Virgil's statement, because they were serious about locking him up for rape. And
Mhm.
Virgil, he knows a lot more than just Steve's thing. I'll guarantee you, because
Yeah.
the way he is scared of Mike still to this day, I'll guarantee.
Okay.
There was a guy, let me tell you. So this is how it happens, supposedly. And I believe it. So David Fishback lived up in the Seattle area. And David Fishback is a known heroin addict. Okay. And he was a friend of Dauber's. And when Mike had it all set, he called him and said, "Hey, I need your help. I need you to come down."
Mhm.
He said, "Okay, whatever." Well, it ended up that Mike took all the guns to him first. Before David could come down, Mike ended up going up there, and that's where the guns were hiding. And then however long it took for Mike to kill my brother, I don't know if it was the day before or whatever, he called David and he said, "I need your help." So by the time David came down, I can tell you that Steve was already dead, but
Mhm.
David helped Mike dismember him. Because when he came down the hill, he told Paula, he says, "You never have to worry about Steve bothering you again." Those were the words he told Paula. So, whatever him and Virgil did then, and it's so funny because, heroin addicts know how much heroin they can induce, right? And they found David with a needle in his arm 10 times, 4 to 10 times what the human body can intake.
He
Wow.
was trying.
Okay. So his son, David Fishback's son, came and testified on our behalf of all of that. That he helped Mike, and his dad told him, and he knows that Mike had something to do with the murder of his dad. He just can't prove it.
And you said the last name was Fishback?
Fishback. Yeah.
Oh, Fishback.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what his son's name is?
Oh my God, I can't remember.
That's all right.
I'm sorry, I can't remember.
It's okay.
And then there was also another young boy who, a lot of these people, it's so funny, ended up getting locked up. Like the other person that we had that also lived on Mike's property for a little bit, and they were going and selling drugs for Mike, and Mike threatened them. Jeremy, whatever Jeremy's last name was, I'm so not prepared for you. I should have better records of this. I just, you
right.
tend to put it to the side. And so Jeremy also lived in that little trailer, and he had been threatened by Mike because something to do with a drug deal gone wrong. And I guess there was money missing or whatever. And Mike says, "You better do as I tell you or I'm going to kill you." So he testified to that. even though he was already in prison, the court sort of looked at him and said, yeah, sure. But as the stories went, that's how Mike would word stuff to people, Just like with Joshua Reddington's case. Remember I gave you that name, Sean? His brother Tom was the one that testified on the behalf that Mike murdered Josh Reddington. And that's how they found his remain under the garage area. So John Blair has his property also like an L shape. But before he built that, there was a garage there that he would rent out to the guys. And that's where Mike was staying. That's where he brought Josh Reddington. That's where Tom. So Tom Tiffany remembers waking up and seeing the gunshot on Josh Reddington's forehead. And he helped Mike drag the body down the stairs to the crawl space. And all he can hear is the saw cutting up Josh's body as well.
Wow.
So yeah, so Tom, after that, didn't say anything. He lived under Mike's thumb, and I'm surprised Mike didn't kill him. Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what he had on Mike besides that, but Mike is very good at killing people that have anything to do with him doing bad things, So Tom testified against it, and exactly where he said the remains were of Josh, that's where they found his hip bone. So that's all we could find, and mind you, it's been, it was over 2001, and Steve was 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe 2011, 12. What are we talking about? 10 years later?
Yeah, 10 years at least.
So, with the water and it being by the sewer, all the remains and stuff had to flush all around. So that's all they could find at the time. When Mike was first, let's go back to how they caught Mike. So they had that little bit of evidence and so forth, and of my brother's remains. It's funny because they caught Mike at the gym. He went to, I don't know if you guys call it the health club or the gym. We call it the gym. And when they busted him, he said, "I don't regret doing what I did."
Wow.
Those were his words. "I don't regret doing what I did." And when the FBI agent heard that, he knew that this was the devil in disguise, And Mike thought he was this archangel who was out to kill all the bad guys when he was the bad guy. It's pretty fun. And then
we have not heard that before, have we, Misty?
Yeah.
He also, there was a murder up here of a bartender, and he tried to pin it on my brother Steve.
Mm-hmm.
So when they were younger, they all were bar hopping. And, Steve stood out because he was, Jesus Christ, he was 6'3", 6'2", 6'3". So he was tall. So people remember him. So, Steve used to carry a gun, and he was trying to pin this other bartender's death. I guess they had slashed his throat, and the guy bled outward, which is horrible. And he was trying to pin that on Steve, telling the feds, well, Steve did that. And I'm like, wait a minute, why would Steve kill somebody with a knife or whatever his throat was slashed with when Steve used to carry a gun all the time? Really?
Yeah.
So at that time, Steve had gone to the military in Greece because we have property out there. And in order to claim it, somebody in your family has to serve in the military. And it just worked out so funny that the cops started coming looking for Steve when he had gone to the military at that time that murder happened. And when the feds told me, I'm like, well, how do you guys know about that murder? We heard about it here. And they're like, well, Mike's trying to pin that on Steve. I'm like, what? I'm like, Steve went to the military at that point. I said, oh, then I started putting 2 and 2 together. And I'm like, that's why the cops were coming around looking for Steve. I said, Steve wasn't even there. Steve was in Greece in the army at that point. He goes, it's funny how everything is so planned out with Mike. I said, yeah, it really is.
Interesting.
Did he was not charged with that one though, right?
No. Nobody was found for that one. But all they said is that Steve and them were bar hopping, and that's who they remember seeing at the bar. So I didn't think, you hear murders all the time in the city. I'm sorry, I'm from Chicago. Every weekend we get shootings, And when that happened, I'm like, damn, that's so close to our neighborhood. We got to be careful. And I take it the bartender was gay, so that's what they were going with, a gay hate crime. And in the 80s, that was big, I guess, early 90s. So I was like, damn, that's pretty horrible. And you hear about it, you don't think about it. And then when it was brought back to me that Mike was trying to pin that on Steve, I'm like, holy crap, what is this guy? I said, oh my God, that's how it happened. He is trying to pin that on Steve, and Steve isn't even here to defend himself. And I told the Fed, and the detective, and I'm like, Steve wouldn't use a knife. He carried a pistol with him all the time. I'm saying, think about what you're telling me. They're like, well, that's what he's saying. I said, he's full of crap. I said, oh, just like Steve took a road trip down to the Hillside Cafe, which is 10 miles down the road, right? Oh, but then the Jeep came to get him. I'm like, really? You're going to believe a word that Mike says? And that sort of threw me off, but that was after the fact. So yeah, there was that's how the story goes, is that Mike tends to get everyone involved, and then after they're involved, he kills them and they go missing. So how everyone is tied and connected, I'm telling you, anything to do with guns, my first thought goes right to Mike. And it's, it's a small, you guys got a very small city there. There's only certain gun show people that know certain gun.
Well, and especially in that time, in that time frame, we were a lot smaller. So, who was Ahren Barnard's roommate when he disappeared?
You guys mentioned that name, and that name, it rings a bell with me, like as if
Tyler.
Yeah. I believe that when I had visited Steve up in Idaho City, I can almost guarantee I know Tyler.
Tyler is, so I will say this, and this is the interesting thing about Tyler, is he was, Tyler was Ahren's roommate, and what the police know for definite happened is that Ahren was on his way home. He'd received a call. He was actually on the phone with another person. He received a call from Tyler. So he put the first call on hold while he took the call from Tyler. Then he got back and talked with his friend, who's Yvette, and was talking with her and said, Tyler says, I have to get home right away. It's important. And then Ahren was literally never seen or heard from again after that. We do know, the police know for a fact that Ahren made it home because his car was found in the driveway of his house. And Tyler was the roommate and was home when Ahren got home. But Tyler has given multiple stories about what happened that night. Anything from, he said, one time he said that he took Ahren to the airport and he flew away. Another time he said that that Ahren never came home that night. I don't remember what the other story was. Anyways, the one thing that we do know about for certain is that Tyler will not talk to anybody about Ahren's case at all. And we've talked to some people that are good friends with Tyler, and they have told us that he will not even discuss Ahren with his closest friends at all.
I bet if you get my Fed agent involved, he'll get Tyler to speak like a little bird tweeting.
Well, Tyler is somebody we absolutely believe that Tyler knows what happened to Ahren. There's no doubt in my mind.
Not only does he know, he probably took part in it.
At the very
whole scenario, I'm telling you, it is like it's flashback for me, man. It's like I'm reliving what I went through, and I don't know what happened to him. Oh, the stories are just so identical. It's crazy.
Well, what's interesting is, so what you were talking about how Mike would control people, right? And people would be scared of that. It just makes me think of, it makes me think of, wondering, because the rumor that we heard is that Michael did kill Ahren at the house that night.
I don't doubt it.
And if that is true, then that means that Tyler would have been there when it happened. And that doesn't mean that Tyler was a willing participant. But it does mean that he would have been there if the rumor about Michael killing Ahren at the house is true. That would have meant that Tyler would have most likely been there, and that might be exactly why he doesn't want to say anything, because a lot of people seem to be very concerned about Michael even nowadays. It's the same with Roy Rice. And Roy Rice is actually, like I said, he was the owner of Vista Pond. He actually also bragged about having Ahren killed. He could not do it himself because he was old and literally crippled. But we've been told by a few different people that Roy bragged about having Ahren killed. Ironically, also over guns. So that's, just trying to see how the pieces fit. And Tyler has been the one piece that we haven't been able to really connect, because what everybody has said to us is that Ahren didn't really know Tyler very well until he moved in. And it was kind of one of those things where, Ahren had a friend living with him, and then he went to his friend and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to have you move out because Tyler needs to move in." And nobody really knew who Tyler was or where he came from. So,
and nobody can tell us why Tyler said he had to move in either, or why Ahren said he had to move in.
Yeah. His girlfriend, and I think they actually broke up shortly before he disappeared. She was a lawyer. She might even still be a lawyer. I'm not
There
really
in Idaho?
Yeah. Yeah. Her name is Constance Norris. And this is how Jeremy Burt connects to all this as well. Is that so Constance was really good friends with another lady named Jeannie. I never remember what her last name was at the time. It was a weird last name. I believe it's Braun now. But anyways, Jeannie got in trouble for forging judges' signatures.
This is way too. Can I tell you that with my brother's thing, supposedly he signed over his car title to Paula, his ex-girlfriend. And if you knew Steve wouldn't sign his damn life away for nothing.
It might be interesting to know if they knew Jeannie then.
And they forged Steve's signature on the back of the title. I'm telling you.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It's so alike.
So Jeannie got in trouble for forging judges' signatures. She tried to get Ahren to testify against her assistant because the goal was to try and pin the forging of signatures onto her assistant.
Of course.
And Ahren refused. He wouldn't do it. And he did go to the DA about it. But Jeannie also, interestingly, she was dating Jeremy Burt. And now Jeremy Burt is the one who ended up testifying against her in court. Then
what is Jeremy? You're going to have to show me these guys.
Yeah, I can show you the pictures. So I can't pull up, for some reason, I can't pull up Tyler's picture on my phone, but I will message him to you. I'll message you the pictures.
Thank you. Yeah. Because, if I see, names could come, they could all sound alike, but faces, I'll know.
But so Jeremy was dating Jeannie. He ended up testifying against her, and that's what cost her lawyer's license, and she went to prison for a couple years for it. Then she got out of prison, and then, depending on who you talk to, they were dating or something supposedly, and then he disappeared. He disappeared pretty much the same. I mean, very similar to how Ahren disappeared. Now, our rumor person told us that Micheal Dauber bragged about killing Jeremy because he sent an innocent woman to prison, an innocent lawyer to prison, or something to that effect. And the person who told us these rumors did say that Micheal, like what you said, he thought he was some kind of I'm just killing bad guys kind of a thing.
Yeah, like an archangel.
Like a vigilante. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's how they connect in kind of a weird way, and just trying to figure out. And there's definitely been people who have disappeared around Roy Rice, kind of like what you're saying as far as how people disappeared around Micheal Dauber. People disappeared around Roy Rice too. And matter of fact, even though Roy is long since dead, there are still people who are I don't know if you've heard the name Ben IT. He did IT work at Vistapon. He had a little IT shop, kind of he rented a space in Vistapon doing IT work. Like you would take your computer to him and he would work on it.
What can I ask you what streets that pawn was at?
It was on Vista.
By Fairview?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not too far from Fairview. So
are you not seeing the connection?
Oh yeah.
Do I have to come out there and slap you a little bit?
No, you don't have to slap us.
Because
I mean,
they are right. And you know what? If I'm not mistaken, oh my God, tell me that's the one that's directly across from Sean's shop.
So Vistapon is really, really close by a strip club called the Torch Lounge.
Yes, the Torch Lounge. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Huh. Interesting.
That whole damn area. And I went in there
Mm-hmm.
to put Steve's flyer. And I was putting Steve's flyers in Sean's store.
Mm-hmm.
And, Sean wasn't opening in the morning, so he would get there later. So I would miss him all the time. No, he did that purposely so he wouldn't run into me.
Interesting.
Mike was big into the gun buy-in, gun changing, gun this, gun sleeping, breathing, all of it. At some point, he was so obsessed with all of it. That's all he would talk about
And
for a very, very long time.
The other thing that makes me wonder is the connection is because Mike was grew up in that mobster environment, right? Roy Rice was very big in that kind of mobster mentality. And from what we have heard, he had kind of that, who were they? I forget who came up. Somebody told us that they were people that would come in black sedans. And I can't remember where they were from.
Wasn't it Las Vegas?
Something like that. So he had that mobster mentality himself. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
yeah. I think for being in Idaho, I mean, we think of mob stuff in Chicago, whatever, but I think for in Idaho, he may have been within that inner circle of what we would have at that time, probably closest had to our own mob. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot.
They would have known each other, and Michael would have been drawn to that.
Yeah.
You guys, this is just way too crazy.
Too crazy. It is definitely, without a doubt, crazy. Yeah, and it's interesting because there's so many different people that connect and are connected into this. I mean, we're talking some of the stuff that we've heard, even human trafficking type stuff involved in some of this stuff, possibly.
Well, Paul, that's what they said he was doing with Paula too, that he was prostituting her for a while too.
Who's that, Mike? Or
yeah, Mike. That Mike would get her to do whatever, and then he would do his deals. I don't know how entailed that got, but Paula was really, oh my God, she was a straight up meth head, and Steve had gotten her off, and he tried keeping her clean, and we definitely all need to get together and do something, because I told Vicky before, I said, Vicky, get me down there. I just wish I had more time. I would have helped Vicky Barnard with this case as well. And and there's no doubt I would have helped her solve it, because you got to be persistent in this kind of stuff. You've got to be a total witch with a capital B. You've got to go in there with an attitude like, I don't care what you say. It's what I want. This is what's going to happen. Because, and especially as a woman, they will walk all over you. They will chew you up and spit you out like you're bacteria. Like, I'm not kidding. If I tell you the abuse that I took by the Idaho City Sheriff's Office, you guys would say, Maria, why didn't you sue? I didn't even care about it at the time. All I cared about was finding my brother. I don't care about anything else. And we found Josh for Vera's sake. And, you know, and Vicky did that all by herself. Vicky Barnard did that by herself for quite a long time. And brags that he killed 13 people. Believe it.
Well, and I was going to say, yeah, he did tell us he fully thinks that Micheal is a serial killer.
Well, no, there's no, he is.
Right.
It's getting the proof. I found two. I got my brother and I got Josh. One more person is all we need. He's, you know, he won't even make it to the parole board. There isn't.
Right.
And I don't believe in my heart that he's going to be released. There's no way. He's in there for 2 homicides. And how our case went, it's bullcrap. Who the hell gets a mediator to mediate 2 homicides? Really? They didn't know how to handle the case. They didn't know. And Idaho is a death penalty state. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
On death, they should have been. Why didn't they do that? They found my brother's remains. They had proof. They had the person who took them. They found Josh's. Really? They did it. They didn't want to screw up the trial, because all it would take is one mistake and they would lose it. And from so many years that they promised, it kept going lower and lower. And he promised them that he would take them to Josh Reddington's body. And he played them for a long time. They would take him out. He just wanted a day out in the sunshine. That's exactly what he wanted.
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
I was just going to say, that the rumors that we heard said that at least there's one more body buried up on his property in Idaho City.
I don't doubt that at all. I believe that there's more than just one body, because there's David Fishback's body they found. Mike Wade, who was very close to Dauber, he is deceased now. They recorded his statement before our court because he ended up dying of cancer. His daughter actually made him go to the cops and confess whatever he knew. He was the one that was living on the governor's property where Mike buried my brother. God bless her, because that helped us a lot. That, you know, by him going to record himself before he passed away, there is definitely, you know, who would know so much more is, so Mike Wade, that old man that I told you that passed away, his daughter was Eden, the one that Virgil was with.
So
Eden, let me tell you how it was. Paula would watch Mike's kids.
okay.
So Mike had a stepdaughter from his wife, Andrika, Andy, whatever you want to call it. And then he had his son. And Paula would watch them. And Eden was the backup babysitter. So when Paula took off, because Steve, that whole scenario, I guess Paula and Steve had gotten into an argument. It was, like I said, it was all set up for her to get him to get upset or whatever. And because what Mike told me is, when I called him on New Year's, the day after or whatever it was. He goes, your brother left. He goes, because he got into an argument with Paul, and now I don't have a babysitter. That was what he was upset about, that he didn't have a babysitter.
So he
and-
needed her to leave to be part of the alibi.
Agreed. So Eden took over the babysitting job. And like I said, Eden was very young, and and Virgil supposedly didn't know it. I believe that Eden knows a hell of a lot more than that, because she was with Virgil at the time. And I'll tell you now, Virgil knows more than just Steve's missing, because
these are people we want to talk to.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And Virgil moved down towards, oh my God, I can't even tell you. It's somewhere around Nampa. I only knew Boise, Meridian, and Nampa, but I drove like throughout the whole state. It's crazy. Wherever Virgil moved, to get away from it all, in order for him to have done that, there's just so much more involved with that.
Okay.
And what's crazy is that I had hired a detective. I should say I wasted money on a pretend detective that he knew Sean well, and they're Mormons, so they would go to the Mormon church, and Idaho, the hell was his name, and his house blew up because there was a gas leak. And it's so funny, because when he started asking questions and stuff, all of a sudden his house blew up because of a gas leak.
Did this happen in Nampa?
I'm sorry?
Did the explosion happen in Nampa?
Yes.